You're watching India Today Global, the big story about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, and the Secret Service has now finally put out a statement, has addressed the press, and it is very clear that this Shashank comes at a time when a lot of them questioning on the security lapse, whether security protocols were followed or not. So take us through what the press statement really says, and then we'll discuss exactly what this means for the U.S. elections.
Absolutely. So this was a statement that has just come out from the Director of the United States Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle. Now, this is someone who has been under fire for the last couple of days because lots of questions being asked right now about how a security lapse like this could have happened. But basically, she's put out a statement where she's first of all expressed condolences to the families of the one person who was killed in the shooting and President Donald Trump. But speaking more broadly and specifically about what she was saying, she said, number one, she said that we're coordinating with local law enforcement, our agents on the ground in the Secret Service who were there in Pennsylvania when this shooting happened. So we're going to try and figure out what exactly happened, how such an event could have taken place. The focus is also going to be on prevention. They're going to try and make sure that such an incident does not take place again. So there, she was very strong in that statement, saying that we're going to make sure that something like this never happens again. They're also very focused on accountability. They've in the statement, the director talks about how the service will cooperate fully with President Biden's independent investigation. He had announced this review when he had made a statement shortly after President Trump was shot. He also there were also numerous calls for congressional inquiries into the Secret Service's actions, and once again, Kimberly Cheatle said that we will coordinate with these investigations fully.
Let's just take it one at a time. Here, the statement says that the Secret Service is working with all involved federal, state, and local agencies to understand what happened, how it happened, and how we can prevent an incident like this from ever taking place again. Also saying that we understand the importance of independent review announced by President Biden, which means that they will have to, there has to be accountability, and here they will have to be, they are answerable to what really happened. So if an independent inquiry and review is taken place, it takes place, to that end. They also talk about how this has led to questions about potential updates or changes in the security plans. Now, why is this happening? This is happening because the Republican National Convention is going to be held in Milwaukee. We just saw some time ago, quite a while ago, President Trump landing in Milwaukee after the injury, after getting all the medical aid and attention, which Shashank clearly shows that he's confident, he's walking about in terms of security lapse. But this security lapse is clear, and it certainly means that there is going to be, which is what the statement also says, there is going to be more heightened security for Trump.
Absolutely.
And maybe for
and she mentions that very clearly, Kimberly Cheatle, in that statement, that the security for former President Trump at this Republican National Convention will be heightened. I also found an interesting part in that statement talking about how they had also made additions to the president's security detail back in June, and that's important because the moment the shooting happened, there was massive politicking taking place where a number of people were sort of speculating, especially if what a lot of politicians and a lot of commentators and so on and so forth. This is why something like this happened. Well, Kimberly Cheatle coming out and in a public statement saying that no, we did actually give additional security.
She's saying that the security plans for national special security events are designed to be flexible. So it changes as per requirement over here. Certainly for President Trump, the requirement has increased manifold, and which is what we're going to look at. But there are also visuals that we have of the Republican National Convention, and there are people over there who have spoken of the convention itself. Let's just listen to what they had to say on the convention that will be held.
Methodology for NSSEs is based on a layered approach that includes support from federal, state, and local law enforcement and public safety partners. We will continue to assess the security environment and adapt our security measures as appropriate. The Secret Service is working diligently with the Milwaukee Police Department, as well as all of our federal, state, and local partners to ensure a safe and secure convention for attendees, volunteers, and the city of Milwaukee. This is a national special security event. That designation is the highest level of security designation that the federal government can determine. So we are confident in these security plans that are in place for this event, and we're ready to go. It's been an 18-month process. We've worked together over that 18 months to develop operational security plans for any and all aspects of security related to this event.
But did it change within the last, has any change been made in the last 24 hours?
We're not anticipating any changes to our operational security plans for this event.
Currently, there are no.
Clearly, the messaging over here is that they are going to ensure that the security and that the area where Trump in future is going to hold rallies is going to be secure.
Right.
But what's the guarantee over here, Shashank? We're looking at a country that really has not paid heed to the calls for banning of guns, off-the-shelf guns,
Right.
the fact that they have not amended their gun laws, and the fact that gun lobbies still play such an important role in U.S. electoral
Right.
or U.S. politics.
Absolutely.
How do you then see this entire incident play out?
Right.
Also, I think America, being what it is, a superpower, is one of those rare countries where we have seen so many assassination attempts and cases of assassination.
Right.
So at this point in time, I'm looking back and thinking, well, this is not the first time.
Right.
Certainly will not be the last if their gun policies don't change.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that there are two things to look at here. Right? The first thing is, of course, guns. And this is a funny way of chickens coming home to roost, because, I mean, the Republican Party is the party that has opposed in many ways proper gun controls. And this is someone who you're finding out is a 20-year-old kid who has just gone out, had bought like 50 rounds of ammunition, had explosive materials in his car, in his home. So there really is a crisis and a problem here that needs to be looked at. There are lots of conversations in the past about America, why the gun lobby has so much power over there. There are other countries, democratic countries like Australia, for example, that used to have very powerful gun lobbies, and then they had large-scale gun massacres in the 1990s, and then they just banned them. And gun fatalities have gone down. America hasn't gone down that path, and I think this is one of those examples of, like I said before, chickens coming home to roost. But you were saying something very interesting, and I think that's one of the things that for me has been so shocking and has conflicted with my image of how I see America as a democracy. Because if something like this happened in India, you would see if there was an assassination attempt, and of course we're no strangers to political violence in this country as well. But it brings the country together. If there was, I would like to believe that if there was an attempt on a senior politician's life in India, everyone would come together to say that this is terrible. And this has happened in American politics as well. There are always conspiracy theories, there are always questions, but it brings the country together. But this time, I think that's just riven the country even more in divisions. You saw politicians immediately coming out and blaming President Joe Biden for his divisive rhetoric, and then you had like a partisan fight happening even while the president was bleeding. So I think that it's such an interesting, I think, a little sad commentary on where the Americans are right now.
It's also what America has become today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is not the kind of conversation or discourse that we saw in the past when there were assassination attempts or successful assassinations. Over here, look at the visual. Look at the visual of Donald Trump having been hurt. And then he gets up and he holds his fist together up in the air. This fist of defiance is how it's being described. Clearly shows that he had his politics in mind, and then he kept calling for America and fight for America, so on and so forth. That itself was the moment of division there. That was the moment where it was not about who comes together, who doesn't. Then there were reports of President Biden having called Trump to check on him. And all that was told to the reporters was that, well, it was a decent, cordial conversation, and that's that. In the past, there would have been an entire press release. The president comes out and again says that there is no space for violence in this country, so on and so forth. But look at the visuals. Look at the man. Look at Donald Trump, and we've seen how this is going to play out. But let's just talk about the politics of it now that you've started. The politics of it. if you zoom out a little, this is going to really play very badly for the Democrats.
Absolutely.
And it is going to be to his advantage should he want to make it one. And knowing Donald Trump, it doesn't seem like he's going to miss an
opportunity. Yeah. No, I think, this was one of the few times, I think we have covered Donald Trump, or at least been exposed to Donald Trump for the better part of a decade now, because since he rose to prominence in national politics, it was, I think, for me personally, the one time in politics that I genuinely saw him and felt, wow, that's extremely presidential, or he behaved himself in a way that I felt was in the highest standards of how you might expect a political leader to react, because it's stunning to think about it. I was just, while you were speaking, thinking about what it would, you said the fist of defiance, I was thinking about what it would have taken to almost get shot in the head, then fall down, be rushed off, and still have the presence of mind to remember that this is a big political moment and to still rally your base. I mean, it showed political instincts, I think, that are very strong, and also it was one of those moments
also
that will live
basic.
on. Yeah, very primal,
very
exactly.
Primal. It's just there. You will not see, I mean, I don't know what Biden would have done.
That's the big question, right? I think,
which is what the conversation actually is.
Right.
They have been talking about this, and that's the conversation.
Right.
Again, zooming out, if this was, which is what everybody's saying, that if this was President Biden, would he have reacted at all?
Absolutely.
The reflexes.
Yeah. And
forget about everything else. A fist, I mean, forget about that.
Right.
Reflexes. Would he have missed the bullet at all?
Right. I think this is the big question. I think that, you've started to see reporting coming out where people, apparently reports in the US media quoting very senior Democrats saying that, look, this election is over, essentially, right? This is, we are resigned to a second Trump presidency. The lead that you saw will simply just expand, and President Biden is not the leader he needs to be to turn that deficit around. He is not. So it just seems like this sort of course, we're still 4 months away in this election, and no one 2 weeks ago could have predicted that something like this would happen. But here we are, and standing right now, I might be forced to eat my hat later on in the future, but at this point in time, at least, it does seem that very little can happen at this point in time that would turn this election around in favor of President Biden.
I agree with him, and we'll both eat crow later, should it not be the way we are saying it. But for now, at this point in time, at this juncture, it looks very bad for the Democrats, not for anything else. With or without this attack, it looks very bad, because for an incumbent, all it took for the Democrats to return was to have a man on the seat, on the high chair, who had his presence, his alertness, his mental ability all intact. That's all it took for Democrats to return. It's a pity that we are looking at Trump, we're looking at a Republican, a real race itself, is because of that. Because there was no other reason why the Democrats should lose this term.
Absolutely.
There's no reason why the incumbent, which is very rare anyway in American history, should be losing. And the fact that he still hasn't given up is telling.
Right.
We will again. It's a couple of months before August 19th, which is when the Democratic National Convention will be held. It all depends on whether it's going to be an open one or a closed one. Should Biden withdraw, the funders are withdrawing, funds are drying up.
Right.
So the Biden camp will have to take a call whether if he wants to stay on or withdraw. If he withdraws, the two options are a closed convention or an open convention as per rules. If it's a closed convention, it will be the Vice President, Kamala Harris, again.
Right.
Is the country ready? Are the Democrats ready for Kamala Harris?
I was just talking to someone the other day, who has close contacts with the Democratic Party in the United States, and I was just like, I went to him and I said, look, please explain to me what's going to happen. He's an American himself, and he said that, look, frankly speaking, right now the conversation among the Democratic Party is that a decision on this will have to be made in the next week. Right, which is that if you were on the fence about Biden saying that, look, it's a 2-point deficit, he can turn it around, he just needs a couple of good debates, this has just eviscerated that, right? So you need to turn things around and turn things around quickly, and even that may not guarantee you the election.
Not really, because think of it this way, Shashank, it was a bad presidential debate.
Absolutely, it was very bad.
Then he had a couple good press conferences.
Right.
But a debate is a debate.
Absolutely. It's an unscripted setting.
And then he's gone from one gaffe or a faux pas to another. He's called battle box, sorry.
And he said
battle
former
box.
Trump instead of former President Trump.
And then he said that I wouldn't have chosen Trump as my vice president rather than Kamala Harris. I mean, where does it stop?
Right.
It's going on and on and on. In fact, after the G20 presidency and when India hosted the G20, he was to land in Korea, if I'm not wrong, and there was such a bad mind block, or I don't know what happened to him during the press conference, that they had to actually, ask the press conference to be over, or not call it off, but just be done with, and took him off the stage.
Right, absolutely. No, it's become really bad, and in fact, even in the G20 summit last year in 2023, he was a completely different person.
The G7.
Right, absolutely. It's just it is stunning how much has changed in just the last 7 to 9 months in terms of his physical demeanor, because Geeta ma'am was there as well. I was there at G20. We saw him, like, this was someone who's obviously 79 years old, but he was very much what he was in 2020 in that presidential campaign where he took on Donald Trump. And frankly,
he was there.
Yeah, he was all there. And frankly, if you ask me, I think that man, I feel, could have still beaten Donald Trump. But the gentleman, the person he is right now, with no disrespect intended, is not the person who can take on Donald Trump. I read this amazing article.
In fact, Shashank did a brilliant show on his show called Threadbare, where you actually break it down on how the Joe Biden we knew is not the Joe Biden we know
Absolutely,
now.
right.
And the then and now, the stark difference between what he was, and he was one of the best orators. He was one of the best speakers. He knew his agenda. He knew what he wanted. He used to give the big fight.
Right.
The youngest, to now being ridiculed, to being old.
Old, yeah.
But age is not a matter here. It's not about the age. It's about how old you've become at that age. That how you've lost your mental capability and capacity at that age, whatever age that might be. And that is a problem. So this actually was a race for the Democrats to have and take, and they're going to lose it. We're saying it a bit in advance. But let's wait and see. Should the convention, the Democratic National Convention, open up for others and not be a closed convention on the 19th of August, maybe then things will turn. But look at the window. They think for a presidential race, look at the lead that Trump would have over any candidate who comes. Now it's a gamble for the Democrats.
No, absolutely.
It's an absolute gamble.
The simple fact of the matter is that the Americans don't work the way we do, right?
No.
You have almost one of the great perversions of the American democratic system is that you are almost campaigning for 1.5 to 2 years to become president.
Absolutely.
So you have affixed yourself in the minds of the American people as a presidential contender. They've got time to get used to you.
Also with precision.
Right, absolutely.
They're time bound. They know exactly which state they're going to go to, what are the rallies, what are the issues, where they're going to move, how they're going to move. It's quite well decided well in advance.
Right.
And very precise. So they know exactly what they're going to do in those many months. Now, the Democrats would have but 3 months with a new candidate.
Exactly.
Will they be able to manage the force of the Republican Party that has consolidated itself behind and are rallying behind one leader? It's no longer a party that's split. But in the Democrats, should Kamala Harris not be the person? Should Biden not be the person? Where the fund is going to look? Will they rally around one person? Would that be good enough? Is something we'll have to wait and see.
And in fact, the person I was speaking to the other day was just telling me that, look, the governor of California, who's a Democrat, Gavin Newsom, who is considered to be one of the front runners, will actually not interfere in this election campaign. He will back whoever which will probably be Kamala Harris, because the idea would be that if the Democrats have to move Joe Biden out, they will have to agree very, very quickly on a candidate, and they have to do it in a clean and smooth way. Because if you are seen to be infighting as compared to Donald Trump, who is now, you know, for the first time in his political career, has universal acclaim around the world for how he's handled himself. You cannot look weak and divided at this point in time. So you need to pick someone quickly. And I think that's the gentleman I was speaking to was just telling me that, look, Gavin Newsom will sit this one out. He will wait for 2028 for his chance.
He'll sit this one out. He'll sit this one out if it's a closed convention.
Exactly.
Obviously, because that's Kamala Harris.
Right.
And no Democrat wants to not have his party in power.
Absolutely.
Losing a second term is going to be disastrous.
Absolutely disastrous
for the
them.
Democrats.
Yeah.
So on that note, we will continue covering all the details on the investigations that are being carried out. The Secret Service certainly here have a lot of answering to do. There have been certain breaches, protocols not being followed, and whether if they exactly had intel, and if they did, what did they do about the security or ramping up of security. However, in Milwaukee as we speak, security has been heightened. There is an increase in security preparedness and preparations for the convention. And that convention is going to be important because President Trump, former US President Trump, is going to not only announce, or he will be announced as the Republican nominee, but also he will be picking his running mate.
Absolutely.
There is some more information that we can add that during before Trump formally accepts his party's nomination for president, the convention will feature speakers including vice presidential candidate, which means it would be announced by then, GOP lawmakers, governors, RNC leadership, that's the Republican National Committee, celebrities, entertainers, industry leaders, and more. So this is going to be a huge affair, the Republican National Convention, and that's where the decision will be taken, not just for the presidential nominee, but also for the running mate.
Absolutely.
We heard a lot about Vivek Ramaswamy. It doesn't seem like he's the front runner now.
Absolutely.
But let's wait and see who that person is going to be. And on that note, we'll be thanking you here only for a bit, because once we have more details, we'll come back live to get you all the details on the US elections, the race for the White House.